Fork was halfway to my mouth when my mom said it. You know, your brother just got promoted again, regional director now. And he did it all on his own. No handouts, no help from anyone. That's what real ambition looks like. She said it like she was reading a grocery list. Casual. Easy. Like she hadn't just slid a knife between my ribs at my own kitchen table. I set the fork down. I didn't say anything. My dad was looking at his plate. My brother, the regional director, the golden child, the man of the hour, was sitting right across from me, cutting his chicken like nothing had happened. He didn't correct her. He didn't even flinch. That was the moment I decided I was done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because the story only makes sense if you know how long this has been going on. My brother is 34. I'm 29. Growing up, he was the one who got the good grades, played varsity soccer, went to a state school on a partial scholarship. Our parents talked about him the way people talk about a limited edition thing, like he was rare, precious, not to be taken for granted. I was just there. I got decent grades. I was quiet. I worked part-time through high school and saved my own money for things I wanted. Nobody made speeches about that. When I was 23, I started freelancing in UX design. I know that sounds like something people say when they don't have a real job, and trust me, my mom made that very clear. So you're working from home? She'd say in a tone that meant, so you're unemployed, but with a laptop. My dad would nod along, not agreeing exactly, but not defending me either. My brother, meanwhile, had gotten a corporate job at a logistics company. He wore a blazer to work. He had a LinkedIn profile with a professional headshot. In my family's language, that meant he had made it. Here's what my family didn't know. 2 years into my freelancing career, I was making more than my brother. Not a little more. A lot more. I had 3 retainer clients, a project rate that would make some people choke on their coffee, and enough coming in every month that I'd paid off my student loans and was putting money into a SEEP era, like a functioning adult. I didn't talk about it because it felt like bragging, and also because I'd learned early that my accomplishments didn't land the way his did. I once told my mom I'd signed a contract with a tech company based in Austin. She said, "Oh, is that steady though? Like, will they keep you?" So I stopped sharing. What I did share, without meaning to, without thinking it would become what it became, was money. It started about 2 years ago. My brother called me on a Thursday night, which was unusual. We didn't really talk on the phone. We texted occasionally, saw each other at family stuff, kept things surface level. So when his name lit up my screen at 9:30 p.m., I felt something small and tight in my chest. "Hey," he said. "I need to ask you something and I need you to not make it weird." I said, "Okay." "I'm kind of in a situation," he said. "I overextended on some stuff. My rent went up, I had some credit card things, and I've got a bill that needs to be handled before the end of the month. I just need a short-term bridge, like a loan." I asked how much. He said $2,000. I want to be honest about why I said yes. It wasn't because I was a pushover. It was because he was my brother, and I remembered being 26 and scared and wishing I had someone to call. I sent the money that night. He said he'd pay me back in 6 weeks. 6 weeks came and went. He didn't bring it up. I didn't push. I told myself it was fine, it was just money. Family doesn't have to keep score. 3 months later, he called again. Same late-night energy. Same, "I need to ask you something." This time it was $2,500. His car needed work, his insurance had lapsed, there was something about a security deposit on a new place. I said yes again. I don't fully know why. Something about the way he asked, not entitled, not demanding, almost embarrassed, made it feel like the right thing to do. But then it stopped being a one-time thing. Then it stopped being occasional. Somewhere in the next 8 months, we developed a system, except we never called it that. He would text me around the 3rd week of the month. Sometimes it was 1,800. Sometimes it was 2,200. Once it was 3,000 because of something he described vaguely as a situation with my lease. I stopped asking for specifics because the explanations were always complicated and never quite added up, and I think some part of me didn't want to know. What I do know is that I transferred him money 11 times in 14 months. I added it up one night when I couldn't sleep. Just under $26,000. And through all of it, my parents thought he was thriving. I knew that because my mom told me constantly, "Your brother is so responsible. Your brother just upgraded his apartment. Your brother is really coming into his own." I smiled and nodded and thought about the Venmo notifications on my phone. I want to be clear, I never told them. I kept his secret because I didn't want to embarrass him and because I was naive enough to believe he was going to get his footing and it would stop. I kept thinking, next month, it'll be the last time. Next month he'll have sorted things out. But here's the thing about enabling someone. And yes, I know that word now. I've done a lot of thinking since all of this came apart. The person being enabled doesn't sort things out. They just get more comfortable. Around month 10, something shifted in how he talked to me. The embarrassment was gone. He stopped saying, "I'll pay you back." He started saying things like, "Can you do the transfer a little earlier this month? I've got something due on the 15th. Or, "I know it's a lot, but you make good money, so it's not like it's hurting you." That one stuck with me. It's not like it's hurting you. He was right that it wasn't breaking me financially. But that wasn't the point, was it? The point was that he was taking money from me every month, performing independence for our parents, and then sitting across from me at family dinners, while our mom said things like, "He never asks anyone for anything. That's just who he is." The dinner where everything changed was in April. My parents had come down to visit, they live about 2 hours away, and my brother had driven in too, which was unusual. My mom had made a point of saying how nice it was that he made the effort, drove all that way, rearranged his schedule. She said this while I was carrying dishes from the car, having spent 3 hours prepping a meal in my own apartment. We were sitting down, food on the table, and my mom started talking about a coworker's daughter who had just gotten her master's degree and landed some impressive-sounding job. "It's so good to see young people who are really going for it," she said. And then, with zero transition, zero awareness, "You know, your brother just got promoted again. Regional director now. And he did it all on his own. No handouts, no help from anyone. That's what real ambition looks like." My dad looked at his plate. My brother cut his chicken. I picked up my fork and then I set it back down. There was a version of me, the version from a year ago, maybe even 6 months ago, who would have smiled tightly and changed the subject. Who would have driven home and cried in her car and then Venmo'd her brother $2,000 3 weeks later and said nothing. That version of me was very tired. I looked at my brother. He was chewing. He hadn't said a word. Hadn't said, "Actually, Mom, let's not." Hadn't said, "Come on." Hadn't said anything. He was just sitting there, receiving the compliment, letting her say no handouts, no help from anyone, while I was sitting 4 feet away from him with 11 transfers in my transaction history. I said, very calmly, "That's interesting." My mom looked at me. "What?" "Just that he did it all on his own. I think that's a really interesting way to put it." My brother looked up. I didn't say anything else. Not yet. I honestly wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just knew something had cracked open and I was standing at the edge of it. Later that night, after my parents had gone to the guest room and my brother was getting ready to leave, he caught me alone in the kitchen. He kept his voice low. "What was that about at dinner?" I asked him what he meant. That comment, "Interesting, what were you implying?" I looked at him for a second. I said, "I wasn't implying anything. Mom said you did it all on your own, and I just found the wording interesting." He stared at me. Then he said, "Don't." Just that, "Don't." Like I was a problem he was managing. I didn't sleep well that night. I lay in my bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about $26,000 and the word "don't" and my mom's voice saying no handouts, no help from anyone. And I thought about all the times I'd swallowed something so he could look good. And I thought, why? What exactly am I protecting here? What am I getting out of this arrangement? The answer, when I was really honest with myself, was nothing. I was getting nothing. I was losing money. I was losing respect in my own family. And I was losing something harder to name. Some sense of being seen, being real, being a person in the room rather than a prop in someone else's story. I made a decision. I wasn't going to blow anything up. I wasn't going to call a family meeting or send a group text or make some dramatic scene. I was going to wait. And when the moment came, I was going to let the truth be exactly what it was. The moment came 18 days later. My brother texted on a Tuesday, "Hey, can you do the transfer this week? A little earlier than usual if possible. Got something due?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "I won't be doing transfers anymore. This is the last one you'll get from me." He called within 4 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I let that go too. Then he texted, "What does that mean? And then are you serious right now? And then we need to talk about this." I replied, "I think you know what it means. I think this has gone on long enough." He went quiet for 2 days. Then he showed up at my apartment. I want to describe the look on his face when I opened the door, because I think about it a lot. He looked not angry, exactly. Not sorry either. He looked like someone who had expected a different outcome and was recalibrating in real time, like he'd shown up to a meeting where he thought he held all the cards and realized too late the room had changed. He came in. We sat down. He started talking about everything going on, the cost of living, his car payment, the way his salary wasn't keeping up, the credit cards. He said he'd been meaning to get on top of it. He said things would be different once he got the raise that came with the promotion. He said all of this in a reasonable, even tone, like he was presenting a business case. I let him finish. Then I said, "I hear you, and I'm still not going to keep doing this." He looked at me like I'd said something in another language. "You've taken almost $26,000 from me in 14 months, I said. "I've never asked you for a single thing in return. I've never told Mom and Dad. I've sat at the table while Mom talked about how independent you are, and how you never need anything from anyone, and I didn't correct her. I did all of that because you're my brother and I wanted to help you. But I'm not going to keep doing it." He didn't say anything for a moment. "Then, I would have paid you back." I said, "When?" He didn't answer. "I'm not angry," I told him, and I meant it. I was past anger. I was in something quieter and more final. I just can't keep being the person who funds your image. That's not a role I'm willing to play anymore. He left about 20 minutes later. He didn't apologize. He said something about needing time to figure things out, which I think meant he needed to figure out who else he could call. The hard part came a few weeks later when my parents found out. He told them. I don't know exactly what version he gave them, but my mom called me on a Friday afternoon and she was upset in that particular way she has. Not yelling, just disappointed, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. She said she couldn't believe I'd been holding this over his head. She said I should have just talked to him privately if I had concerns instead of making him feel bad. I said, "Mom, I did talk to him privately. I never told you." He told you. Silence. "I've been sending him money every month for over a year," I said. "Almost $26,000. And for that entire time you've been telling me what a self-sufficient, independent person he is. I just want you to understand what was actually happening." More silence. Then, "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I didn't want to embarrass him. I was protecting him." She didn't know what to do with that. I could hear it in the quiet on her end of the phone. The story she'd been telling about her son, the tidy, uncomplicated story of the capable one and the directionless one, had a very large hole in it suddenly, and she was standing over that hole not knowing how to fill it. My dad called me the next day. He was quieter about it. He asked some practical questions. How much? How long? What exactly had I been told each time? He listened without interrupting. At the end, he said, "I owe you an apology." I wasn't expecting that. "We've been unfair to you," he said, "for a long time. I don't think we saw you clearly, and that's our fault, not yours." I cried after I hung up. Not sad crying. More like something releasing, something that had been held tight for years just letting go all at once. My brother and I haven't really spoken since, not in a dramatic, declared way. We just haven't had a reason to. He came to a family thing in June and we were polite, surface level. Like coworkers who once had a falling out, and neither of them wants to revisit it. I don't know what he's doing about the money situation. I hope he's figured something out. I genuinely do. Not because I feel responsible for him anymore, but because I understand that being in financial trouble and pretending you're not is an exhausting and lonely way to live. And some part of me, even now, hopes he finds his way out of it. My mom is different with me now. Not completely. She's still my mom. She still has her blind spots. She still sometimes talks about my brother in a way that softens the edges of what happened. But she asks about my work now. She asked me last month what her retainer client was. She actually listened to the answer. Small things, but I've learned to count them. What I know now that I didn't know 14 months ago is that staying silent to protect someone is not the same as being kind. I thought I was being a good sister. I was being a human ATM who'd convinced herself the transaction was love. And the worst part is that nobody around me could see what was actually happening because I worked so hard to make sure they couldn't. I don't regret the money. Or not exactly. I regret the silence. I regret every dinner I sat through nodding along while my own mother described me as the lesser version of someone I was quietly keeping afloat. I regret that I thought keeping his secret was a form of loyalty, when really it was just me making myself smaller so he could look bigger. I'm not doing that anymore. And on the days when I'm not sure I made the right call, when I feel the guilt creeping in, or the old reflex to just fix things and smooth things over and be the one who gives so no one else has to, I think about my dad's voice on the phone. We've been unfair to you. I don't think we saw you clearly. Somebody finally saw it. That was enough. I keep thinking about that fork, how it stopped halfway to my mouth and I just held it there. Like my body knew before my brain did that something had finally reached its limit. People talk about rock bottom like it's always loud. A blow up, a slam door, someone screaming across a room. But sometimes it's completely quiet. Sometimes it's a dinner table and a fork and your dad's voice saying your brother did it all on his own, and you're sitting 4 feet away holding the receipt in your memory. What I've learned, the hard way, the long way, is that how we choose to act when no one is watching is the only thing that actually belongs to us. I sent that money because I believed that was what good people did for family. I kept the secret because I thought loyalty meant protection. Those weren't bad instincts. But I applied them without asking whether the situation deserved them, and that's where I went wrong. Doing the right thing for the wrong person in the wrong dynamic doesn't make you good. It just makes you useful. There's a difference, and I wish I'd understood it sooner. The clarity I found after all of this wasn't about anger. It was about seeing things as they actually were, not as I wanted them to be. My brother wasn't struggling in secret while trying his best. He was managing a performance, and I was funding it. My parents weren't just proud of him. They had built a story about both of us that wasn't true, and I had let it stand because correcting it felt like a kind of violence I wasn't willing to commit. That wasn't wisdom. That was fear dressed up as grace. Real clarity, I think, is uncomfortable. It asks you to look at your own choices alongside everyone else's. And when I did that honestly, when I sat with the number $26,000 and asked myself how I'd let it get there, I had to admit that I had chosen convenience over truth, again and again, for over a year. I had told myself I was being selfless, but selflessness without boundaries isn't a virtue. It's just a slow way of disappearing. What kept me standing, finally, was something I can only describe as a refusal. A quiet, bone-deep refusal to keep shrinking. Not rage. I was past rage by then. Just a decision, made in a still moment, that I was done making myself smaller so someone else's story could stay intact. That kind of steadiness is something you have to build over time. It doesn't come from one conversation or one brave text message. It comes from every small moment you chose. Honesty when the easier thing was to say nothing, and you survived it. My dad said he hadn't seen me clearly. I think what he meant was that he hadn't been looking, and I understand that I hadn't been making it easy to look. I'd been quietly absorbing things, smoothing things over, making sure the surface stayed calm. I was good at it. That's not a skill I'm proud of anymore. What I'm building now is different. It takes more out of me some days. Saying the true thing, holding a line, letting people be uncomfortable with reality instead of rushing to fix it for them. None of that comes naturally yet. But I'm learning, and the learning, slow as it is, feels like something that actually belongs to me. That's enough to keep going.